I'm Elara. I'm 28.
For 28 years, I truly believed I was an unwanted obligation, a child my parents kept out of duty, not love. I thought the worst they could do was forget my birthday. Then, 5 weeks ago, they remembered it on purpose. At my elaborate 28th birthday gala, surrounded by 75 relatives, my father placed a red folder where the cake should have been. What was inside? DNA results proving I wasn't theirs. An itemized bill for my entire childhood. And then, my mother's hand, casually taking my car keys. In that single catastrophic night, my whole life unraveled. But what they didn't know was the real secret. I'd carried the key to that very bakery since I was 6, and they had no idea what door it actually opened. Before I do, take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if this story earns it. Drop your city and your local time in the comments. I like knowing who's out there.
I'm Elara. I'm 28.
And my parents threw me a gala just to take everything I owned. 75 relatives showed up. There was no cake. Where the cake should have been, my father set down a red folder. 5 weeks ago, I still believed I was the unwanted baby they had taken in out of duty, and that the worst thing they could ever do was forget my birthday again. Then they remembered it on purpose. DNA results. A bill for raising me. My mother's hand closing around my car keys while the whole room watched her do it. But here's what none of them knew. I had been carrying the key to that original bakery since I was 6 years old. Welcome back to Hidden Family Revenge, where the quiet ones turn out to be holding every card, and the people who throw you out are usually the last ones to read the fine print. If a story ever made you sit up at the very end, you already know the feeling we chase here. It started with a phone call I almost didn't answer. Chloe called on a Tuesday, which already told me something was off. My cousin only called when she needed a ride alone or an audience.
Elara.
Oh my gosh.
Don't freak out, she said.
I waited. Mom and Dad are throwing you a surprise gala. I set down the data spreadsheets I'd been auditing for your 28th. All 75 of us. The whole family. In 28 years, my parents had never thrown me a party. Not at 18. Not at 21. Not when I passed my finance certifications and became the first licensed anything in our family. Chloe got a lavish destination party for her 18th. I got a card signed by the Hayes like I was a coworker. You have to act surprised. Okay. Chloe said, I'm so not supposed to tell you. I said, I would act surprised. I'm good at acting like things don't hurt. I've had a lot of practice. After we hung up, I sat in my apartment in Savannah and let myself wonder if something had finally shifted. Maybe 28 was the number that made me real to them. Maybe they wanted to make up for the other 27 years. 28 years of forgotten birthdays, and suddenly I mattered enough for a guest list. I should have asked why. People who never wanted you don't suddenly want a crowd to watch them celebrate you. But I wanted it to be true so badly that I packed a bag before I'd thought it through. That's the thing about being the overlooked one. You'll forgive almost anything for the chance to finally be seen. There was a sentence I grew up living inside of. I was 9 the first time I heard it whole. Viviana, my mother, or the woman I called my mother, stood at the kitchen window talking to our neighbor, Mrs. Gable. They thought I was outside. It can't be easy, Mrs. Gable said, raising someone else's. Viviana didn't even lower her voice. We kept her out of duty, not blood. I stood very still in the hallway. I was 9, and I understood every word. After that, I knew my place in that house. I was a kindness. They reminded me of the way you remind someone of a loan. When I asked once about my original birth certificate, Viviana's mouth went flat. You were adopted, Elara. Don't go digging in things that'll only hurt you. She said it like a door closing, and I never saw the certificate. I stopped asking. Instead, I made myself useful because useful felt close to wanted. I learned the difference too late. People keep what they love. They keep records on what they tolerate. I told myself duty was a kind of love if you squinted hard enough. And for 19 more years, I squinted. So when my father called and said he wanted me at that gala, I aimed my car at a family that had only ever measured me in what I cost them. I should have remembered Mrs. Gable's kitchen. Duty, not blood. They had told me exactly what I was when I was 9. I just hadn't let myself believe they meant it. The second thing I always knew was that the bakery chain would go to Chloe. The original bakery sat on a prime corner in downtown Savannah, the anchor for the growing chain. White storefront, a leaning awning, and a small, rusted outdoor sign that creaked every time it moved. I'd sat on the bench outside that bakery alone through most of my childhood, listening to that sign squeak while the laughter happened inside without me. "The chain's yours someday, Chloe," Arthur used to say, ruffling her hair. He never once said it to me. When I was 12, I asked if I'd get to work there, too. Viviana laughed. "You'll do just fine on your own. You always land on your feet." Translation: you are not ours to provide for. So I landed on my own feet again and again until I forgot anyone was ever supposed to catch me. Chloe never worked a day she didn't film. At 25, she still lived in that expansive family home, posting from the lavish kitchen, calling it our family's legacy business. Meanwhile, I paid off my student loans alone, bought a used compact car alone, and climbed up to fix the bakery's leaky roof every single fall alone because Arthur's back was bad, and somebody had to. I never understood why a struggling family clung so hard to that original bakery building and its old equipment when it seemed to drain them. The business mattered to them in a way I couldn't name. I filed the question away with all the others. I'm a data entry specialist. I've learned that the discrepancies I can't see yet usually have something load-bearing hiding underneath. My life in Savannah was the one place I felt solid. I audit ledgers, track financial flows, identify anomalies, the slow, honest math of what holds and what fails. I'm the one who finishes the report nobody else can stand to read. At work, they call it diligence. The one time I saw a therapist, she called it something else. "You manage people the way you manage data structures," she said. "You wait for the cracks so you can fix them before anyone notices." She wasn't wrong. I was the family's repair crew. I drove Arthur to his physical therapy appointments. I sorted Viviana's business tax notices when they piled up unopened on the counter. I solved everything and asked for nothing, which kept me useful, and at a safe distance at the same time, and that suited me fine. I can read a balance sheet for a 40-year-old company in my sleep. I never once managed to read my own family. Funny, the things we get good at, so we don't have to feel the other things. I told myself I was just being responsible. Responsible people don't ask whether they're loved. They ask whether the accounts are reconciled. It let me love them from behind a spreadsheet where nobody could tell me I didn't belong. That week, I was 3 days out from final submission on a major client audit I'd given 2 years of my life. The project lead was mine to lose, and walking away mid-audit was exactly the kind of thing that loses it.
I knew all that. I went home anyway.
When the people who raised you finally call you by name, you don't stop to read the risk assessment first. Then Arthur called, and I felt the old gravity pull. "Your mother really wants you there," he said, his voice gone thin and old. It would mean a lot to both of us. He'd never said that. Not once in 28 years had Arthur Hayes told me I'd mean a lot. I should have heard the wrongness in it. Instead, I heard the man who drove me to school the one year Viviana couldn't be bothered, and I softened the way I always softened. I asked my deputy to cover the final submission. He raised an eyebrow at me. "Family thing," I said, like that explained anything at all. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept running the setup the way I run a financial projection, and the variables refused to balance. A surprise gala, 75 guests, a father suddenly tender. Chloe sworn to secrecy. Viviana, who once skipped my high school graduation for a hair appointment, planning a celebration of me. None of it carried its own weight. When a structure doesn't add up on paper, there is always a force you haven't accounted for, pushing from a direction you can't see. I just didn't know yet what was leaning on the other side. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself that 28 years of being overlooked had made me suspicious of kindness whenever it finally showed up. Both of those things were true. Neither one made the dread sitting in my chest go quiet. I packed my good navy dress, set my alarm, and lay in the dark doing arithmetic on a family I'd never been able to solve. 2 days before the gala, Uncle Miles called me out of nowhere. Miles is Arthur's younger brother, the only lawyer our town ever produced, and the kind who never lets you forget it. We'd exchanged maybe 10 sentences in my whole adult life. "Elara, just thinking about you," he said, far too warm. I waited. We talked weather, then data audits, and then there it was. "Listen, while you're down, there's a little family paperwork we ought to button up." I asked what paperwork. "Oh, nothing exciting.
Housekeeping.
Just gets everything clean and simple for everybody." Clean and simple. Lawyers say that the way magicians say nothing up my sleeve. I asked him to email it ahead so I could read it first. People who read things carefully make Miles nervous. And reading things carefully is practically my entire personality. "Easier to just sign at the bakery," he said a little too fast. "No need to make a production out of it." I let it slide on the phone. I do not let things slide on paper. After we hung up, I sat with the receiver still warm in my hand. A surprise gala, and now surprise documents. Both of them routed through a man who bills by the quarter hour. Whatever this weekend was turning into, it had a paperwork shape to it. And paperwork shapes are the only kind I'm genuinely good at reading. I didn't have a name yet for what they wanted me to sign. I knew exactly one thing for certain. I was not going to put my signature on anything I hadn't read twice and slept on once. That same night, my grandmother called, and Grandma June never called. She's 82, Viviana's mother, and she had faded to the edges of the family years ago. A quiet woman in a quiet room nobody visited enough. Her voice shook.
"Elara.
"Come see me before the gala."
Just you."
I asked if she was all right. "I need to give you something before it's too late." I asked what she meant by too late. She didn't answer that. "And, Elara, you still have the key?" My hand went to my collarbone before I decided to move it. I've worn a small brass key on a frayed blue ribbon since I was 6 years old. Grandma June gave it to me herself, pressed it into my palm, and folded my fingers shut over it. "For when you're grown," she'd said. I asked her then what it opened. She only said, "You'll know." 22 years later, I still didn't. I'd worn it through college and every job after. A habit I never examined. The way you don't examine your own heartbeat.
"Good.
You keep it close," Grandma June said. "Now, then," softer, almost to herself. "I should have given you the quilt years ago. Your mother's quilt." I told her Viviana didn't quilt. Grandma June made a small sound, like a laugh that hurt going down. "No, baby, not Viviana." And she hung up before I could ask the only question that mattered. I lay awake a long time after that. One hand around a brass key to a lock I had never found in a family that apparently had at least one mother I'd never met. Chloe's countdown started the next morning. She posted a blurry shot of the original bakery's interior strung with fairy lights. "Biggest family reveal ever this Saturday. You do not want to miss this." 200 comments under it. Cousins I hadn't seen in years replied with rows of eye emojis. A reveal at a birthday gala for me. I read it 4 times and felt the dread cool into something harder. Then Viviana texted, the first message from her in months. "No happy early birthday. No warmth at all. Wear something nice. There will be photos.
Be on time.
6 sharp." That was the whole message. I typed and deleted 3 replies. The woman planning a celebration of my entire life couldn't manage one kind word about it. I called Chloe to feel out the edges. "What's the big reveal, Chloe?" She giggled. "That high nervous one she does. You'll see. It's like huge. Mom's been planning it for months."
Months.
Viviana had spent months on something she was calling a reveal. Routed through Miles's quiet paperwork with 75 witnesses and enough photos for a documentary. I design data structures for a living. I know the difference between a celebration and a production. This one had a script, a cast, and a run of show. I just hadn't been handed my lines. I packed the navy dress Viviana would approve of, zipped the bag, and told myself I was simply walking into a party I should be grateful for. Some part of me, the data specialist who reads all the way to the last page of the report, was already quietly bracing for load. I drove down on Friday, a full day early, because reading a room is easier when the room doesn't know you're reading it yet. The town hadn't changed. One stoplight, the old hardware store, the Baptist church with the cracked sign. The original bakery came up on the right exactly as it always had. White storefront, the leaning awning scrubbed clean and strung with fairy lights. The narrow street of October trees going to gold. I parked and heard it before I saw it. The rusted outdoor sign creaking in the wind. The same shriek I'd grown up beside. My great-grandmother sat on that bench, Grandma June told me once, and her mother before that. A Mercer bakery, June always said, not a Hayes one. And I'd never once thought to ask why she made the distinction. I sat in the car a minute just listening to that sign, feeling 6 years old again. Through the bakery window, I could see Viviana moving and Arthur, and a third figure I recognized by his posture before his face, Miles in shirt sleeves bent over the counter. The counter was covered in papers, folders, a long document, a pen laid out across it like an offering. They weren't decorating. They were preparing. Viviana said something, and Miles tapped the long document twice. The way you point at a line that needs a signature.
I didn't go in.
I drove to a motel out by the highway and lay on a stiff bedspread while my grandmother's words went around and around. Come see me before the gala.
Just you.
Before it's too late. Let me pause right here because this is the night my gut started screaming, and I almost drove straight back to Savannah. If you've ever stood outside your own family and just known that something was being arranged about you without you, type I felt that in the comments. I read everyone. Stay with me because what my grandmother put into my hands the next morning turned this whole weekend upside down. Old habits don't ask permission. Saturday morning, a little after 9, I drove to the original bakery to help set up because setting up was my job in that family, even on my own birthday. The front door stood open. I stepped into the hall, and the voices coming from the back office made me stop where I was. The deadline's her birthday, Uncle Miles was saying. Midnight tonight. After that, it's out of our hands. Viviana's voice, hard as a nail. Then she signs tonight in front of everyone. Paper rustled. The quitclaim's airtight, Miles said. She gives up any claim to the property. We forgive the debt, and it's done. Chloe, bright and greedy. So, the bakery's really mine after? A pause. Then, Viviana, quiet and certain. The way you say a thing you've decided is owed to you. It always should have been. I stood in that hallway and forgot how to breathe. Arthur's voice came last, tired and flat. One signature, then she stops being our problem. I backed out the way I'd come, down the steps, past the rusted outdoor sign, still creaking in the morning wind, into my car. My hands shook so badly, I missed the ignition twice. The bakery, a quick claim, a deadline that was my own birthday. Whatever they had planned for tonight, it wasn't a gala at all. It was a closing. And I was the seller who had never once agreed to sell. I didn't go inside. I drove straight to the one person who had called me before any of this started. The one voice that hadn't fit the script. Come see me before the gala.
Just you.
Grandma June lived in a little place behind the church, and she had gotten smaller since I'd seen her, swallowed up in a recliner with an oxygen line at her nose. Her eyes were still sharp, and they fixed on me the second I came through the door. There you are, she breathed like she'd been holding it for weeks.
Seat.
Let me look at you.
You said.
My heart was still going from that office. She studied my face so long it unnerved me. You have her eyes, she said. God help me. You always did. I asked whose eyes. She didn't answer. On the table beside her, in a tarnished frame, sat a photograph I had never seen. A young woman, maybe 25, laughing at something just past the camera. Same dark brows as mine. Same gap between the front teeth I'd spent my teenage years hating. I picked it up, and my hand wasn't steady. Who is this, Grandma? Grandma June's jaw worked. She reached for my hand, her grip all bone. Some doors I should have opened 28 years ago, she said. I asked again gently. She looked at the photograph, then at me, and her eyes filled. My girl, she whispered. My youngest girl. I set the frame back down the way you set down something you've just realized is load-bearing for an entire life. Viviana was Grandma June's daughter. I had always known that. I had never in 28 years been told that Grandma June had two daughters, I said. It wasn't a question. Grandma June nodded slow, like the motion cost her something. Viviana and her baby sister. What was her name? Her lips trembled around it. Lillian. The name landed somewhere old in me. I had heard it once or twice as a child, whispered between Viviana and Arthur in another room. The way you say a name you've all agreed to bury. I asked Viviana about it once. She went white and told me to mind my business, and I learned not to ask a second time. What happened to her? Grandma June closed her eyes. She died young. Far too young. You were too. I went very still. And nobody, I said, ever told me she existed. Grandma June's tears came then, the slow kind that old grief makes. Because of what we'd have had to tell you next, she said. Tell me what, Grandma? She gripped my hand harder. In a minute. There's something I have to give you first. She lifted a shaking finger toward the bedroom. On the bed, folded up. Bring it here to me. I went. On the narrow bed lay a quilt folded into a soft square. Old, much handled, a faded double wedding ring pattern in blues and creams. I lifted it, and it smelled like cedar and decades. I carried it back to her the way you carry glass. Whatever my grandmother was about to tell me, this quilt was part of it. I could feel the weight of 28 buried years in my arms, and I hadn't even unfolded it yet. Grandma June took the quilt into her lap and pressed her face into it for a moment, breathing it in. Then she smoothed it across her knees with both hands.
Lillian made this, she said.
The winter she was carrying you. She was never much of a sewer. Look at these corners, crooked as a country road. She almost smiled. Viviana's the one with the neat hands. Viviana never touched this quilt in her life. This was my mother's, I said. The words felt strange in my mouth, like a coin from a country I'd never been to. Not Viviana. Grandma June shook her head. Not Viviana. I sank into the chair across from her with the quilt now in my own lap. My mother's crooked stitches under my fingers. 28 years of one sentence. Kept out of duty. Not blood. And here was the blood in blue and cream sewn by hands I would never get to hold. I traced a seam and felt something raised along the binding. Embroidery small and careful in a corner worn nearly smooth. I turned it to the lamp. Stitches deliberate and close. Grandma June watched me find them. Go on, she said softly. Read it. My own name, Elara, sewn there by a woman I'd been told had nothing to do with me, and beneath it, 2 more words in her uneven hand. Our girl. For 28 years, Viviana had told me I wasn't theirs. My mother had sewn the opposite into this seam before I could walk. And my grandmother, at 82, was finally ready to tell me which one was true. Grandma June told me everything then in the flat, careful voice people use for the truths that cost them the most. Lillian was her youngest, bright, headstrong, the one who got the looks and the trouble both. At 25, she fell hard for a young man named Marcus Calloway, a long-haul truck driver who worked the interstate weeks at a stretch. They married quiet. The original Sweet Legacy Bakery building, the white storefront, the prime corner location, had come down to Lillian. The way the youngest daughter sometimes gets the family business in old families. Then Lillian got pregnant with me, and the headache started. An aneurysm, the doctor said afterward. She was gone 3 weeks after my 2nd birthday, with Marcus out on the road and unreachable for 9 days. Before she died, Grandma June said, Lillian made a will. She left the original bakery building and its prime corner location to you in trust, held until you turned 28, so nobody could pressure a child out of her own legacy. Viviana and Arthur were to raise you and live on the premises, rent-free, until then. That was the deal. That was the whole deal. She gripped my hand. Your mother stitched your name into that quilt the week before she died. Your name, Elara, and the truth of whose you were, so that no matter what anybody told you, it would be sleeping under your own roof. My fingers found the brass key at my collarbone without being told to. Grandma June saw it. Marcus left you that key when you were 6, she said. For when you're grown. I asked what it opened. Grandma June's eyes drifted to the window, toward a bakery 4 miles off, strung with fairy lights for a gala I was the guest of honor at. You'll know it, she said, when you find the right door. And the math finally balanced. The bakery mattered, because the bakery was mine. The deadline was my birthday because that was the day the trust would hand it to me. And the quitclaim waiting on that counter was the force I hadn't accounted for. 75 witnesses gathered to watch me sign away the one thing that had always secretly been my own. I didn't cry in front of Grandma June.
I'm not built that way.
I saved the falling apart for later, alone, where it can't be used against me. What I felt sitting there with my mother's crooked quilt in my lap wasn't only grief. It was the cold, clear thing I feel when an audit turns up the one crack that explains 100 small symptoms. Everything fit now. The duty not bloodline. The business that was always Chloe's someday. Miles's housekeeping paperwork. Arthur's sudden tenderness. Bait. Every word of it. They needed me soft, shocked, and surrounded, signing before I could think it through. I am very bad at being rushed. Asked Grandma June one more question. Does Marcus know it's tonight? She looked away.
He went off years ago, she said.
I don't rightly know where. I didn't push. She was 82 and spent. I helped her back into her chair, tucked the quilt around her knees, and promised I'd come back. Then I sat in my car in the church lot and did the thing I do best. Instead of confronting a single soul, I made a list. Verify the will, verify the deed, verify the trust, find out in writing what the county already knew about who owned that original bakery. I had 8 hours until the gala started. The Register of Deeds opened at 10. I would walk into that gala tonight, but I would not walk in with empty hands. They wanted a signature. I wanted a record. And only one of those two things still holds up in the morning after everyone's gone home and sobered up and remembered what they did. The county Register of Deeds smelled like old paper and burnt coffee. A clerk named Brenda pulled the bakery parcel up without much trouble. Small towns keep good records and few secrets if you know which drawer to open. The deed came up on her screen, and there it was, plain as a financial statement. The property was held in the Lillian Mercer family trust with a single named beneficiary and a distribution date, the beneficiary's 28th birthday. I asked Brenda, as evenly as I could manage, who that beneficiary was. She squinted at the screen. Says here, Elara. She read my own name back to me off a county database I had never once seen. That you, hon? I told her it was.
She didn't blink. To her, it was just a Saturday shift.
To me, it was the floor of my whole life rearranging itself under my feet. The county had known who I was longer than I had. I asked for a certified copy. $40 and a notary's stamp later, I had it folded in my bag, heavier than its weight. The way true things tend to be. Viviana and Arthur had lived 26 years on property that a public record said was set to come to me on a date now only hours away. I photographed the screen. I photographed the deed. A probate attorney could confirm the rest, but the bones were already here, recorded and stamped, and impossible to quietly make disappear. I'm a data entry specialist. I don't argue with people. I argue with documents. And documents don't cry, and they don't change their story the second 75 relatives are watching. There was one more thing in the file, and it raised the hair on my arms. The will had been filed properly 26 years ago, but the trust had never been administered. No accountings, no distributions, no notice ever sent to the beneficiary.
To me.
It just sat there dormant, like a valve nobody had ever opened, while the people living on the property quietly let the years run out. Brenda frowned. Trustees and out-of-state fella, she said. Initials MC. Address down in Florida. Hasn't filed a thing in years. MC. Marcus Calloway. My father. Named trustee by my dead mother. Gone off to who knew where, while Viviana and Arthur ran out the clock for almost 3 decades. I asked Brenda whether a trust like this could simply be ignored to death. She shrugged. Not legally, no. Beneficiaries got rights. Concealing what's owed in heir? That's the kind of thing gets lawyers real interested. I thanked her. I did not mention that the heir was standing at her counter. Out on the courthouse steps, I called a probate attorney a colleague swore by, a woman named Kendra Foster about 2 hours away, and left a careful voicemail with 3 photos attached. Then I sat in the sun and let one fact settle on top of all the others. Marcus wasn't a deadbeat who'd vanished. Marcus was the trustee. Wherever he had gone, My mother had trusted him with the one thing that was supposed to come to me. The question wasn't whether he'd abandoned me. The question was why he had waited so long, and whether tonight was finally the night he meant to stop. Right about now, I had a certified deed in my bag, a dead woman's trust with my own name on it, and a father I'd been told was a stranger. I could have stormed that bakery screaming. I didn't. I'm a data entry specialist. I don't react. I verify, and then I let the load find the weak point all by itself. If you're the kind of person who keeps the receipts and stays calm while everyone else loses it, stay with me. We're almost to the door. Kendra Foster called me back within the hour, and she did not waste words. Don't sign anything, she said first. Not tonight, not ever, not if your life depended on it. I laid out the whole setup for her. She made a low sound. A quit claim signed under that kind of pressure to surrender a vested inheritance? We believe a court would set that aside fast. And concealing a will from an heir may carry real consequences in this state for whoever knew. She asked if I wanted her to come. I said yes, and gave her the address. Then I drove back to the motel, sat with the quilt across my knees, and made a different kind of decision. I could skip the gala. I could let Kendra handle all of it with letters and filings, clean and bloodless, and never set foot in that bakery. But that would let them keep the story. They'd tell 75 people I was the ungrateful one who didn't even show. No, they wanted witnesses. They had built a whole room full of them. I would simply let those witnesses see the truth instead of a lie. I folded my mother's quilt into my bag beside the certified deed. Her crooked stitches against the county's straight lines, the two halves of who I actually was. Viviana's old sentence ran through my head one more time as I zipped the bag. Kept out of duty, not blood. She had been wrong about the blood all along. Tonight, in front of every single person she'd invited, I was going to correct her math. I got to the original bakery at 6 sharp because Viviana said 6 sharp, and I wanted nothing about my arrival to give her an opening. The gravel lot was already full. Pickups, a church van, Cousin Earl's old sedan with a mismatched door. Fairy lights glowed in the dusk. A speaker somewhere played the kind of jazz a family puts on to look warm. At the entrance, I passed Reverend Evans, who'd married half the people inside. He took my hand in both of his. "Big night for your family," he said, and there was something careful in it, something rehearsed. "They told us all to be on time. Said there'd be an announcement." An announcement. I thanked him and kept walking, and that one word followed me up the path. They had told the whole town there would be an announcement. Cousins nodded at me a beat too fast and looked away. Aunt Patty squeezed my arm and said, "Bless your heart," in the tone that has never once meant blessing. The entire crowd had been briefed on a script I'd never read, primed to witness something, and not one of them would hold my eyes for longer than a second. I'd walked onto failing data systems before, the quiet, weight-heavy seconds right before something gives way. This was that exact silence, dressed up in fairy lights. I touched the brass key at my throat once, the way some people touch a cross before they step into the dark. And I climbed the steps toward a door I had been let through my whole life without ever once being told that it was mine. The bakery door stood open, light spilling out, and I stepped through into a wall of silence. 75 faces turned toward me at once. Nobody clapped.
Nobody yelled surprise.
There was no cake. The long counter at the center where a cake should have sat held a single red folder and a fan of papers, and one pen laid across them like a dare. Viviana stood behind it in her good blouse, hands folded. Arthur beside her, gray in the face. Uncle Miles a step back in his courtroom posture. Chloe off to the side, phone already up, the little red of a live stream glowing. The fairy lights I'd spent my childhood wishing were for me hung over all of it. "There she is," Viviana said, and her smile didn't reach anything above her mouth. "Come sit down, Elara. Everyone's been waiting." I walked to the chair they'd set facing the counter, facing them like a witness stand turned the wrong way around.
He said.
I sat my bag in my lap, the certified deed and my mother's quilt zipped inside it, and I folded my hands exactly the way Viviana had folded hers. Behind me, 75 people I'd shared Christmases with held their breath. Through the open doors, I could just make it out under everything else. The rusted outdoor sign, creaking in the dark. The same sound that had kept me company every single time this family left me on the outside. Tonight, it sounded less like loneliness and more like a witness clearing its throat. "Whenever you're ready," I told Arthur, calm as a clipboard. He picked up the folder. Arthur opened the folder and held up a single page. His hand wasn't steady. "Elara," he said loud enough for the back row. "These are DNA results. We had them run." The room rustled. "They prove what your mother and I have known for 28 years, he swallowed. "You're not ours." Somewhere, a cousin gasped right on cue. "We took you in," Arthur went on, reading now off a card. "We fed you. We raised you. And we are done carrying it." Viviana stepped forward before he'd finished, because Viviana could never let Arthur land the blow himself. She looked at me and at all of them, and she said it like a verdict she'd waited years to read out loud. "We kept you out of duty, not blood." There it was. My whole childhood spoken into a microphone for 75 people to hear. A few of them nodded along. Then Viviana's hand shot out and closed past the strap of my bag onto the car keys clipped to its side and pulled them free. "And the car stays," she said. "You bought it on a salary you only got because of this family." I let her take the keys. I didn't reach. Reaching is exactly what they wanted. Reaching is how you end up signing. I sat with my hands folded over a bag that held something worth a great deal more than a used compact car. And I waited. The way you wait for a structure to tell you where it intends to fail. Viviana read my stillness as shock. "She's not even going to deny it," she announced to the room. The crowd murmured. She had no idea she was standing right on top of the trapdoor. Uncle Miles cleared his throat and slid the long document across the counter, turning it so the signature line faced me. "Now, Elara, let's keep this dignified," he said in the voice he saves for juries. "Your folks spent a lot raising you. We've itemized it." Arthur set a second sheet beside the first. A column of numbers totaling at the very bottom $300,000. "Food, clothes, school, the roof over your head," Arthur said. 28 years of it. Miles tapped the long document. "This here's a simple quick claim. You release any claim to family property. You walk away clean, and we forgive the whole debt. No losot, no aglinis." He held out the pen. "Sign right here, and you keep your good name." Chloe drifted in closer with her phone, framing my face. "Just sign it, Elara," she stage whispered. "Don't make it weird in front of everybody." $300,000 on one page, a release of family property on the other. They had built the entire night to put that pen in my hand while I was too humiliated to read what it gave away. I looked at the quick claim. I knew exactly what family property meant now, and I knew down to the square foot who it actually belonged to. I did not pick up the pen. "Before I sign anything," I said, and my voice came out level, almost gentle. "I have one question." Miles's smile flickered. Viviana's chin lifted. Behind me, the whole room leaned in. "Ask it," Viviana said like she was granting me a last meal. "You say I'm not yours," I said. I let it sit a beat. "Then whose am I?" Viviana blinked. "It wasn't in the script." "You were abandoned," she said quickly. "Left with us. That's all you need to know." "No," I said. "I don't think it is." I stood up slowly. No drama. Just a woman getting to her feet. Her name was Lillian. The bakery went dead silent. Somewhere in the back, an old woman's voice made a small, broken sound. "Lillian Mercer. Your baby's sister, Viviana." "My mother." Viviana's composure split straight down the middle. "Don't you say her name," she hissed. And then it all came up at once. 28 years of it. She got everything. The looks, the business, all of it. And then she up and died, and left me her mess to clean up for 3 decades. Her voice climbed and shook and filled the whole bakery. "That bakery is mine. I earned it. I raised her brat, and I earned every single inch of it." "Viviana." Arthur grabbed her arm. Too late. 75 people had heard her. The mask was off, and there was no fitting it back over her face. And in the stunned hush that followed, a man stepped out of the crowd near the bakery doors. 60-some, weathered in a plain gray suit that didn't quite fit, holding a worn leather folio against his chest. He had my dark brows. He had the gap between his front teeth. He crossed the floor and stopped 10 feet from me, and his eyes were wet, and his voice, when it finally came, was the steadiest thing in that entire room.
Her name was Lillian, he said.
And I'm Elara's father. I've been waiting 28 years to walk through that door. Viviana stumbled back into Arthur. Chloe's phone drooped in her hand. And every one of those 75 faces swung from me to him, to the woman who had just screamed that my mother's business belonged to her. A woman beside Marcus in a charcoal blazer set a briefcase on the counter. Kendra Foster, the probate attorney who'd quietly arrived while the family was busy crucifying me. She opened the folio and laid its contents where the crowd could see. "This is the last will of Lillian Mercer," she said, her voice carrying clean to the back. "Filed in this county 26 years ago. It leaves this original bakery building and prime corner location to her daughter in trust to be delivered on her 28th birthday, which is today." She set down a second page. "And this is the certified deed. The trust matured today on Elara's 28th birthday. She is its sole beneficiary, and this property passes to her, not through any signature in this bakery." A noise went through the bakery like wind through standing corn. At the back, a chair scraped, and Grandma June pushed herself up onto her cane, oxygen lines still at her nose, 82 years old, and finished being quiet. "It's true," she called out, and the whole room turned to her. "Lillian was my daughter. Elara is her child." She looked straight at Viviana. "Your mother stitched your name into that quilt the week before she died, and I have watched this family lie to you ever since. No more." Viviana's face caved in. Uncle Miles was already sweeping papers toward his briefcase. "Now there's no proof anyone actually knew. You drafted a quitclaim to strip a vested inheritance from an heir," Kendra said, not even looking up at him. "I'd start thinking hard about your bar license, counselor." Miles shut his mouth. Viviana whirled on Grandma June, then Marcus, then the crowd, snarling that they had all twisted it, that she had given up her whole life. And the relatives who'd nodded along an hour ago now stepped back from her one by one, the way you stepped back from something hot on the stove. It was Arthur who broke. He sat down hard on the edge of the counter, the itemized bill crumpling under him, and put his face in his hands. "We had nowhere to go," he said. And for once, it wasn't a tactic. It was just true. The dealership went under. Then the medical bills. "This place is all we've got, Elara. I'm 60 years old with nothing." For one breath, I felt the pull to fix him. The same pull I'd answered for 28 years in this family. Then I remembered that he had read my disownment off an index card. Fear explains a man. It doesn't excuse what he chose to do with it. "You could have asked me," I said quietly. "I would have helped you. I always did." I picked up my bag. I took out my mother's quilt and spread it across the counter, crooked stitches up, my name and the 2 words she'd sewn beneath it. "Our girl." There for anybody who cared to look. Then I walked past all of them, through the open bakery doors, across the dark yard toward the white storefront where the rusted outdoor sign was still creaking, and I climbed the steps. Viviana came after me, her heels loud on the boards. "Where do you think you're going?" "Those keys are mine now." I reached up and lifted the small brass key off the frayed blue ribbon I'd worn since I was 6. "You can keep the keys you took," I said. "I already have the one that matters." I slid it into the front door lock. It turned like it had been cut for that lock yesterday, because of course it had been cut for me a lifetime ago. The bolt drew back with a soft, final click. The bakery Lillian built, the business they had raised me outside of, opened under my own hand. I stepped onto my own floor, turned, and looked back at the 75 faces watching from the light of the gala. Then I closed the door. The trust closed 3 months later, clean. The original bakery building, the prime corner location. All of it recorded in my name, exactly the way my mother wrote it down before I could walk. I didn't keep the debt fight going. I never sent Arthur a bill for the leaky roof or the physical therapy drives or the 28 years. I'm not built to collect interest on people. What I did do was set a boundary. In writing, the only language that holds up in the morning. Viviana and Arthur got 90 days to find a new place. A relocation check I didn't have to write but wrote anyway, and a single condition: no contact unless they had something true to say. They never managed to find anything true. Viviana called 11 times that first month, the messages sliding from rage to weeping and back to rage. I let every one of them go to voicemail. Chloe's live stream did what those things do. It cleared 2 million views, and almost none of them were on her side. Her sponsors evaporated by Tuesday. She deleted the account and resurfaced a few weeks later doing of all things healing journey content. Uncle Miles is answering a complaint to the state bar about a quitclaim he never should have drafted. Kendra tells me those don't usually end gently for the lawyer. Grandma June lives in the bakery now, in the downstairs room with the good light, exactly as Lillian's will always allowed. She's teaching me the names of the old pastry recipes my mother experimented with. And Marcus, I'm taking slowly. We meet for coffee on Sundays in town. He brings me one photograph of Lillian each week and tells me one story to go with it. I haven't called him Dad yet.
He hasn't asked me to.
I waited 28 years to find you, he said. I can wait however long it takes for the rest. Last week, I sat on the bench outside the bakery for the first time as the woman who owns the place. I'd oiled the rusted sign that afternoon so it wouldn't squeak anymore. Then I sat there a while, and I left it alone. Some sounds you keep. Once you finally understand, they were on your side the whole time. Your worth was never theirs to grant or to take back. And sometimes the people who throw you out are simply handing you the key to a door that was always your own. That's my story. A folder where the cake should have been, a quilt stitched by a mother I never got to meet, and a key I'd carried since I was 6 without ever knowing it opened my own front door. Lessons from this story. Always verify important information and legal documents yourself. Trust your intuition when faced with suspicious circumstances. True worth and belonging are intrinsic, not granted by others. Deception and manipulation eventually lead to exposure and consequences.